Colts, and one of the reasons why David Corley looking for a job, possibly. I don't know if that's happened since the bowl game, but figuratively out of work after his dismissal as Penn State wide receivers coach after the loss to Kentucky. So you've got a new wide receivers coach.
Yeah, his name's Jared Parker. If the name sounds familiar to anyone who's listening, it's he was the interim head coach at Purdue a few years back when right after Darrell Hazel got fired mid-season. And actually, I think one of his first games as interim coach, first few games, I should say, was against Penn State when that offense was when Joe Moorhead's offense was finally starting to click and Saquon Barkley was running over people and Trace was throwing deep balls left and right. So the Penn State put up like 62 points on him that day. But it was interesting to see him now on the staff. But he was at Duke the last 2 years as a receivers coach. And from what I've read from Duke fans, just sad to see him go. He's apparently a solid recruiter in addition to being a good receivers coach. So it sounds to me that Penn State got a pretty good one at receivers. So hopefully I realize it's not the coach can't go out there and catch balls for them, but hopefully, this helps see a reduction in drops from last year.
Yeah, and it's a situation in which that was one of the probably leading positions, and you can correct me if I'm wrong. You know the football team much better than I do. I watch the big games, but watch 5 or 6 games a year. That was one of the positions I thought that was upgraded and reached a near elite level during that Trace McSorley run at the end of Christian Hackenberg's run there with guys like Deshaun Hamilton and Geno Lewis, and then into the guys like Chris Godwin, of course, having a huge Rose Bowl game. And it looked like it was going to be a great position for Penn State. And then it just regressed this past season. And as you're well aware, a lot of the aggregate numbers, the in-depth metrics compiled by the likes of the S&P Plus type metrics from SB Nation and also Pro Football Focus just details a horrendous year out of the receiving corps.
Yeah, indeed. I think they led the nation in drops, or they were up there in the drops category. That's what. And I mean, when you're dropping this, I know the offensive coordinator Ricky Ronnie was a nice I guess what the term is like for beating up on something like whatever they like whipping boy. Yeah, he was. I know he was everyone's favorite whipping boy on the Penn State portion of the internet. And I mean, I'm not saying that criticism wasn't justified. I think I had some issues myself with it, but if they could have just hung on to some more of those simple passes that they dropped, I think it would have led to maybe an additional win or two. And I think the talk about, I think Ronnie doesn't get quite as much crap as he's gotten right now. So I think when the execution is doing a lot better, everyone looks better, including the coaches.
Dropping passes, I liken it to missing field goals in that nobody's perfect. It's like making a 5-foot putt, but you expect it 90% of the time. Obviously, there's a difference between dropping passes when you're wide open versus out fighting a defender for the football. So you want wide receivers that can do that as well. High point the ball, steal it from the defender, do all those athletic things, but just catch the passes that are right there. And sure, if you're throwing the ball 35 times a game, like most offenses in America, and completing 25 of those passes, you're going to have a drop, maybe 2 in the game. But when it gets to be 4, 5, those kill drives, and you only get the ball so many times, and you're basically almost every time you drop a pass, you kill a drive. You have your offense in a position that you're behind the sticks, and or it's a third down and you just killed the drive. So it's a big deal, definitely. And again, it's almost like field goal kicking. You can't make every one, but you expect the field goal kicker to make 85, 90% of them within a certain range. So what I found interesting about David Corley's resume, as you well know, Tim, is that he came from Army. Now, to take an Army wide receiver coach and then take him to one of the top programs in the country. Again, this is Army. They got a great football program, but they don't throw the ball. They don't catch the ball. It just seems kind of odd.
You know, if I may interject for a second, Mark, when Corley was hired, actually, he was initially hired to be the running backs coach.
Okay.
So he was not brought in with the intention of making him receivers coach. But then what happened was Josh Gaddis left for Alabama like a couple weeks later. And so suddenly the receivers coaching job was opened up. And at the same time, around that time, Jaywan Sider decided to leave Florida. So he was available. And, when you got like a guy like Sider on the market, you go after him. That's what Franklin did. So he brought Sider in and decided to make Sider the running backs coach. And I guess he figured since Corley, he already hired Corley, and since Corley had experience coaching receivers, even was at Army where they only throw the ball like 10 times a year, he figured he could just shift him over to receivers coach and bring in Sider, and maybe things would work out okay. Obviously that wasn't the case. So, but I should say he initially hired Corley to coach running backs. So